can't we find some women that took a concerted effort to go out and find women, and they brought us whole binders full of women. I know what it takes to bring them back, and I'm going to do that and make sure when you graduate. When do you graduate? 2014. When you come out in 2014, I presume I'm going to be president. I'm going to make sure you get a job. Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, you bet.
Build on the 5 million jobs that we've created over the last 30 months in the private sector alone. Governor Romney said we should let Detroit go bankrupt. I said we're going to bet on American workers and the American auto industry, and it's come surging back. I want
to make sure that we understand. He said that I said we should take Detroit bankrupt. And that's right. My plan was to have the company go through bankruptcy like 7-Eleven did at Macy's and at Continental Airlines and come out stronger. And
Candy, what Governor Romney said just isn't true. He wanted to take them into bankruptcy without providing them any way to stay open.
Fewer people working today than we had when the president took office. If the unemployment rate was 7.8% when he took office, it's 7.8% now. But if you calculated that unemployment rate, taking back the people who dropped out of the workforce, it would be 10.7%.
In 16 years. Natural gas production is the highest it's been in decades. We have seen increases in coal production.
On federal land. As a matter of fact, oil production is down 14% this year on federal land, and gas production is down 9%.
Our production is going up, and we've opened up public lands. We're actually drilling more on public lands than in the previous administration. And when I hear Governor Romney say he's a big coal guy, I mean, keep in mind, when you were governor of Massachusetts, you stood in front of a coal plant and pointed at it and said, this plant kills.
That's the problem. Sure. In the last 4 years, you cut permits and licenses on federal land and federal waters in half.
Not true, Governor Romney.
So how much did you cut them by?
Not true.
By how much did you cut them by then?
Governor, we have actually produced more oil.
No. How much did you cut licenses and permits on federal land and federal waters?
Governor Romney, here's what we did. There were a whole bunch of oil companies.
No, I had a question, and the question was, how much did you cut them by?
You want me to answer
How much did you cut them by?
I'm happy to answer the question.
All right, and it is?
Here's what happened. You had a whole bunch of oil companies who had leases on public lands that they weren't using, and we are now reletting them so that we can actually make a profit.
And production on government lands is down.
No, it isn't.
Production on government land of oil is down 14%, and production on gas is down 9%.
It's just not true.
It's absolutely true. You'll get your chance in a moment. I'm still speaking.
Well,
and the answer is, I don't believe people think that's the case, because that wasn't a question.
Okay.
That was a statement. I don't
think about what the governor just said. He said, when I took office, the price of gasoline was $1.80, $1.86. Why is that? Because the economy was on the verge of collapse. Because we were about to go through the worst recession since the Great Depression, as a consequence of some of the same policies that Governor Romney is now promoting. So it's conceivable that Governor Romney could bring down gas prices, because with his policies, we might be back in that same mess. But we've built enough pipeline to wrap around the entire earth once, just like this one. Actually, it was at town hall, and I said I would cut taxes for middle-class families, and that's what I've done, by $3,600. I said I would cut taxes for small businesses, who are the drivers and engines of growth, and we've cut them 18 times.
The top 5% will continue to pay 60% as they do today. I'm not looking to cut taxes for wealthy people. I am looking to cut taxes for middle-income people. And why do I want to bring rates down and at the same time lower exemptions and deductions, particularly for people at the high end? Because if you bring rates down, it makes it easier for small business to keep more of their capital and hire people.
Asking for him. That's $7 trillion. He also wants to continue the Bush tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans. That's another $1 trillion. That's $8 trillion. Now, what he says is he's going to make sure that this doesn't add to the deficit, and he's going to cut middle-class taxes. But when he's asked, how are you going to do it, which deductions, which loopholes are you going to close, he can't tell you any specifics beyond Big Bird and eliminating funding for Planned Parenthood in terms of how he pays for that. Now, Governor Romney was a very successful investor. If somebody came to you, Governor, with a plan that said, here, I want to spend $7 or $8 trillion, and we're going to pay for it, but we can't tell you until maybe after the election how we're going to do it, you wouldn't have taken such a sketchy deal.
When we're talking about math that doesn't add up, How about $4 trillion of deficits over the last 4 years? $5 trillion. That's math that doesn't add up. Where he said when he was running for office he would cut the deficit in half, instead he's doubled it. We've gone from $10 trillion of national debt to $16 trillion of national debt. If the president were reelected, we go to almost $20 trillion of national debt. This puts us on a road to Greece.
And, you know, I was raised by a single mom. My grandmother, she started off as a secretary in a bank.
New York in Albany did a survey of all 50 states and concluded that mine had more women in senior leadership positions than any other state in America.
Governor Romney not only opposed it, he suggested that, in fact, employers should be able to make the decision as to whether or not a woman gets contraception through her insurance coverage.
I just note that I don't believe that bureaucrats in Washington should tell someone whether they can use contraceptives or not, and I don't believe employers should tell someone whether they could have contraceptive care or not. Every woman in America should have access to contraceptives, and the president's statement of my policy is completely and totally wrong. President Bush and I are different people. He starts with a very robust policy to get all that energy in North America and become energy secure. I'll crack down on China. President Bush didn't. President Bush didn't. President Obama was right. He said that that was outrageous to have deficits as high as $500 billion under the Bush years. He was right. But then he put in place deficits twice that size for every one of his 4 years. Our party has been focused on big business too long. I came through small business.
Well, now we've seen 31 consecutive months of job growth, 5.2 million new jobs created. Governor Romney invested in companies that were pioneers of outsourcing for China to spy on its own folks. Governor, you're the last person who's going to get tough on China. You know, there are some things where Governor Romney is different from George Bush. George Bush didn't propose turning Medicare into a voucher. George Bush embraced comprehensive immigration reform. He didn't call for self-deportation. George Bush never suggested that we eliminate funding for Planned Parenthood. So, now, does that mean you're not struggling? Absolutely not. The commitments I've made, I've kept. And those that I haven't been able to keep, it's not for lack of trying, and we're going to get it done in a second term.
I think you know better. I think you know that these last 4 years haven't been so good as the president just described, and that you don't feel like you're confident that the next 4 years are going to be much better either. I can tell you that if you were to elect President Obama, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get a repeat of the last 4 years. He hasn't even made a proposal on either one. He said in his first year he'd put out an immigration plan that would deal with our immigration challenges. Didn't even file it. He keeps saying, look, I've created 5 million jobs. That's after losing 5 million jobs. He took office, 32 million people were on food stamps. Today, 47 million. 5 million jobs doesn't even keep up with our population growth. My dad was born in Mexico of American parents. Ann's dad was born in Wales and is a first-generation American. We welcome legal immigrants into this country. I would not give driver's licenses to those that have come here illegally as the president would.
You know, he wants to help those young people too, but during the Republican primary, he said, I will veto the DREAM Act that would allow these young people. He called the Arizona law a model for the nation.
I did not say that the Arizona law was a model for the nation in that aspect. I said that the E-Verify portion of the Arizona law, which is investments I have over the last 8 years have been managed by a blind trust. And I understand they do include investments outside the United States, including in Chinese companies. Mr. President, have you looked at your pension? Have you looked at your pension?
I've got to say.
Mr. President, have you looked at your pension?
You know, I don't look at my pension. It's not as big as yours, so it doesn't take as long.
Let me give you some. Let me give you some advice.
I don't check it that often.
Let me give you some advice. Look at your pension. You also have investments in Chinese companies. You also have investments outside the United States.
Still dealing with our diplomats being threatened, Governor Romney put out a press release.
And I think the president just said correctly that the buck does stop at his desk, and he takes responsibility for that for the failure in providing those security resources. That the president, the day after that happened, flies to Las Vegas for a political fundraiser, then the next day to Colorado for another event, another political event. I think these actions taken by a president and a leader have symbolic significance. And the president's policies throughout the Middle East began with an apology tour.
Would play politics or mislead when we've lost 4 of our own, Governor, is offensive.
Days before he called the attack in Benghazi an act of terror.
Get the transcript.
He did, in fact, sir. So let me call it an act of terror.
Can you say that a little louder, Candy?
He did call it an act of terror. It did as well take 2 weeks or so for the whole idea of there being a riot out there about this tape to come out. You're correct about that.
The greatest failure we've had with regards to gun violence in some respects is what is known as fast and furious.
And when Governor Romney was asked whether hiring more teachers was important to growing our economy, Governor Romney said that doesn't grow our economy.
Saying we're going to take more money from people and hire more government workers, raise more taxes, put in place more regulations. Trickle-down government has never worked here, has never worked anywhere. And has a regular opportunity to label them as a currency manipulator, but refuses to do so. On day one, I will label China a currency manipulator. So they want to be here. Canada's tax rate on companies is now 15%. Ours is 35%. So if you're starting a business, where would you rather start it? The plan is completely false. Let me tell you, we don't have to settle for gasoline at $4. We don't have to settle for unemployment at a chronically high level. We don't have to settle for 47 million people on food stamps. We don't have to settle for 50% of kids coming out of college not able to get work. We don't have to settle for 23 million people struggling to find a good job. If I become president, I'll get America working again. I will get us on track to a balanced budget. The president hasn't. I will.
I believe Governor Romney is a good man. Loves his family, cares about his faith. But I also believe that when he said behind closed doors that 47% of the country consider themselves victims who refuse personal responsibility, think about who he was talking about.